everybody, it's Oksana, and today I'm going to show you how to make this coiled pendant. It's kind of a thick wire pendant here with a little stone, and mine has this type of bail that you put a cord through and you do a lark's knot, but you can just make a normal bail out of it. It's totally up to you. I just wanted to do something a little different, but if you want to see how to make this pendant, just keep watching. So I started with some, I know this is kind of hard to see, but this is 26 gauge wire, round, dead soft copper. And then I used a coiling gizmo to make this nice long coil. And if you don't have a coiling gizmo, that's totally fine. I do have a video, by the way, on how to make these coils. So I'm gonna kind of show you a little bit in this video, but the other video is like really from scratch if you wanted to see that. So it actually doesn't really matter that much that you and I have the same exact measurements here, because you'll see the way I'm gonna be using this, it's just gonna kind of go around the stone, and so it doesn't really matter if yours is a little shorter or longer, it would just kind of end quicker. So mine is 10 inches. So then I'm gonna take some 22 gauge round wire. Again, copper, dead soft. I've only used dead soft wire. And this piece is longer. It might be longer than I need, but I tend to always like cut this particular one too short. So this time I really thought that I would overshoot it and have it not be too short. So let me measure it for you. It is 39, almost, it's 40 inches. So then I'm taking that and I'm putting it right through this coil. All the way through until it comes out the other end. Like this. And lastly here, for this particular part, I have some 20 gauge square copper wire, dead soft. So what I'm gonna do is, oh, actually, let me measure that. So that's a really long piece because I'm gonna use it for more than just, I'm gonna coil around it, but then like the extra ends I will use as well. So this one is 17 inches. So I'm gonna give myself a few inches here, maybe like 5 inches or so, if that seems reasonable, 4 or 5 inches. So then I'm gonna grab this coil. Let me switch hands here. Okay. So grabbing this square wire, taking these two ends, the 26 gauge end that's coming from the coil and the 22 gauge end that's coming from the wire that's inside of the coil. So I'm taking both of those and I'm wrapping them around. And then I'm just continuing. It's a little hard at first, but then once you get a few, then your fingers can really grip the part that you've done, and then it'll be much easier to turn. But in the beginning, it's harder. See, now it's becoming easier because now I can grab this little bit and just turn it. So I'm using this hand to guide, using the other hand to turn, and I'm coiling this all the way until I run out. And then once I run out, I will just finish off those ends. Just gonna trim the little wire ends here and just squish them down with my pliers on both sides. So then once you're done with that, and by the way, I had quite a bit of that 22 gauge wire left over, the round one. So yours probably doesn't need to be quite as long as mine. So what I'm gonna do is use this 22 gauge half round wire. So 22 gauge half round, dead soft copper. And And I like to use this backwards. So usually when you do something with half round wire, you will use it the round side up. So I'm putting it the round side down, and I'm just kind of wrapping it once around this square wire to get it attached to it. And then I'm finding right here where my coil starts, and I'm placing it in between the coils. And then I'm just turning the coil, and with my right hand I'm guiding the wire. So then it looks like this. So I'm just going to do that all the way up, and then I'll pinch down, you know, cut and pinch down the tail ends on both sides of this wire. So now I have a finished coil here, and mine ended up being 3.5 inches, which it looks like up close. All right, so that coil, you're gonna leave it alone for a few minutes and do this next part. I have an 18 gauge square wire that is 19 inches long. Looks like this. And this is going to be your frame. This is my stone. It is round. It's a labradorite, and it is exactly 1/2 inch, or like 13 millimeters. 12 maybe. Anyways, it's small. And what you want to determine now is how big you want your pendant to be. So if you wanted it to be quite large, you can always make more coils and keep adding to it. But basically this is going to make the frame, and you're going to bend it in the shape of a circle. And mine's probably too long, so if you want your piece to be nice and small, and you probably don't need to cut as long of a wire. So I'm gonna bend mine. I want mine to be little because I don't want to have to make another coil. And this is my little circle. Let me measure it. So it's 1 inch across. See that? And what you can do is you can use these 2 wires and make a normal bail, like your standard typical bail. And then just the wires that are coming out of bail, use those. We're gonna kind of fill in the circle a little bit. But what I am gonna do is I'm gonna make the sort of bail that you tie like a lark knot through it. So instead of the bail hole going this way, it's gonna go this way. So before I do that, I'm gonna connect my circle and wrap this a few times to just connect it, and then I'm gonna cut this wire, and I'm gonna pinch down those little ends. So they'll be kind of here on the inside, the little ends. On the inside of the circle. Oh, I can't reach that other one. There it is. All right. So that's that. Now I am going to take this wire that is closest to me. See if you look kind of how they intersect. This one is closest to me. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bend it into a round shape like this. And then I'm going to do it again, but the second time it's going to be smaller, just kind of like that. Maybe even smaller, like that. And then I'm going to do one more loop in the opposite direction. Sorry, it's just so hard to twirl this wire around because it's so long, the ends of it. So I keep like not fitting this in the frame. All right, like this. Totally up to you. You could just have one normal loop. You don't have to go all like I did here. So now we have these two ends. This one on the back here, I'm just gonna bend so that it's inside of the circle. So we have these two ends that we need to use to make a frame on the back. So this one, we probably want to tie that down at some point and secure it because it's connected to our bail. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get that over to an edge, line it up with an edge, and secure that down. Just wrapping another little piece of 22 gauge wire around it, like 4 times or so. Like this, and then I'm trimming it. And I'm using my pliers. To squish it down. So if you take your stone, you imagine it being in the center. This is kind of what, you know, a rough draft of your pendant is going to look like. And you want to create something for the stone to sit on. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do this back wire first. So I'm flipping it to the back. And I'm bending it. Just to make a little loop like this. And yours honestly doesn't have to be exactly like this. There's lots of different ways to do it. I'm just trying to fill this circle in with wire, and I'm trying to have small spacing so that it fills up most of the back. Kind of like this. So now I'm going to cut this wire like so, and then this wire from the front, you could use that as well, but I am actually going to cut that because I think that this will be enough. So then after I cut it, you can use your round nose pliers. I'm just using my regular pliers and just turning it to like a little loop, and then same here with this little end, just to close it up so there's no wire end sticking out anywhere. All right, so that is, here's the front, that's our frame. Okay, so here's our frame from the front. And what you want to do now is you want to take more of these little pieces of 22 gauge wire and you want to secure your frame. So right here, right down here, and then also here. So I'm literally going to do the same thing that I did here and here. Just going to use this wire, wrap around, and connect so that the frame is all connected, okay? And then I'll just do that really quick off camera. I ended up making this loop a tiny bit smaller. If it looks any different, it was kind of like sticking out past the frame. I didn't like that. So you want to take your stone. I'm just trying to find the best way to position it. Just going to be like this. Okay. So it's going to go here in the center. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our coil And here, roughly around the center, we're gonna take, sorry, this is hard to show. We're gonna take this wire end, the shorter end. You know what, maybe I'll just cut it. Let me cut it a little bit. Then it'll be easier to do it. So this little end of 20 gauge square wire, we want to wrap that around the frame, the 18 gauge. Just to attach it, and because this is a thick wire, you don't have to wrap it a ton for it to attach pretty well. Alrighty, so then you want to just trim that. So the end is, this is the back of my piece, so I want the end to be away from it because it's a sharp little wire end. There we go. So this is the back. And here is the front. So now we take our stone, place it however you want it to go, and then you are holding that stone down with one hand, and with the other hand, oh, this is so hard. With the other hand, you're wrapping the coil around the stone like this. Sorry, I know my fingers are in the way, but if I move them, then everything's gonna fall apart. And it's okay if your stone is not particularly secure at this time. We will secure it more. So I'm actually just gonna take my stone out. And then my coil here, I'm gonna use this end to attach it to my frame. Just hard to do with this super long wire getting in the way. Alright, so now the coil is attached, and this wire here, this 20 gauge wire, I'm going to twist it. So that I can use it also kind of for decorative purposes. I'm just kind of having it go around on the outside of my coil. And then once I am back here to kind of where I started with it, I'm gonna cut it, and feel free to, you can wrap it more, or, you can really do so much with this. But I'm just putting it through the frame, making sure that it's all nice and tight before I attach it. It looks a little loose. There we go. So I'm just wrapping it around this frame and just gonna squishing it down to attach. And then I'm cutting that little end of my wire sticking out there and just smushing it down. So right now it looks like this, and it still kind of has the ability to move a little bit. So we are gonna secure these wires down a little bit, but first I'm gonna add more wires to secure the stone in and B, fill in some of these gaps. So now I'm gonna take another piece of 22 gauge wire and a piece of coil, again using 26 gauge wire to coil. And let me measure. So my coil is a little bit over 4.5. My 22 gauge wire is just a little bit over 8. So I'm giving myself a little tail here, and I'm putting this through right here. So I popped my stone back in. By the way, so this is going to be bent around my stone to trap my stone in. So you want to bend it in such a way that it's smaller than the stone. You don't want to make a big giant loop that the stone can pop out of. And then this is just gonna go here like this. So on this end, we have this piece of 22 gauge wire, and I'm just gonna take that and I'm gonna wrap that around my frame, just anywhere that's convenient for you, anywhere that's near. So I'm just gonna wrap that just a couple of times to attach it securely to the frame. Then I'm just gonna trim it off. And then tuck in that little end like that. And then over here, I have just a tiny bit more of the coil. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put that right through here. And then I'm just gonna kind of do this and then tuck it in there into my frame. Like that. And just wrap it a few times. I'm actually gonna capture this twisted, what is this, 20 gauge wire that we have here. I'm gonna capture that. I'll show you in a second. See that? So that I'm attaching it. And I'm just gonna squish that down so that it's not sticking up, so it's nice and tight. There we go. Then I'm just gonna wrap it a couple more times around something before I trim that off. Just going down to the nearest frame edge here. Like so. So our stone at the moment is a teeny bit wobbly because this wire is not really attached tightly to anything, and it moves. Like, you can probably grab it and pull it out if you wanted to. So here's what that is looking like so far, and I'm gonna add another coil. This one's a little shorter, I think, 4 inches long. It's 4 inches, and then just like a longer piece of 20 gauge wire, 9 inches. I'm sorry, 22 gauge, and this is 26 gauge coil. So this is the part where you kind of play it by ear, because it's really up to you. You know, you can just keep adding all kinds of wires. You can add more, you know, twisted wire, some plain round wire, whatever you want. All right, so I'm just gonna stick it in this hole right here. And I'm gonna attach this little tail end before I do anything else. So I'm gonna take it and wrap it around. So I'm actually wrapping it around these two, kind of attaching them. Not that you need to do that. I don't think they're gonna like unattach or anything if you don't do this, but just wrapped it right there. Here it is. So now I am gonna go, I want it to go in the back of this twisted wire, but I think it's gonna be difficult for me to get my coil in there. So I'm just, oh, my coil slid up. Push that back down. Okay, going on the outer edge. Outer edge, outer edge. And it's exactly enough to get me back to right here. So then I'm putting it through this hole. And actually, let me see here. Oh no. Okay. Putting it through this hole. I'm holding the whole piece tight as I do this so that, you know, when I pull it through, everything doesn't like shift out of place or anything. Ta-da! It is on this end. Actually, what I think I'm gonna do for a little bit of added effect, I'm just gonna wrap around this and this together. And this will be visible from the front, my 22 gauge wire, but that's okay. I think that might look, yeah, that looks kind of cool. Maybe one more wrap. Kind of helping fill in that little hole as well. All right, I think that's looking good. My little pendant, and now I'm gonna cut this wire. Let me see, I'm gonna cut it and kind of just tuck it towards here. I think this way the little wire end is almost like hidden underneath this wire here. Okay, so that's gone. And now I have kind of a hole right there that I'm gonna fill in with some beads. And then maybe I'll put a few beads up here. I'm not 100% sure yet. So here's what I'm gonna do first before I do any of that. I'm gonna take a nice long piece of 26 gauge wire. I don't know, maybe like 10 inches, it doesn't matter. You can just cut yourself more if you run out. But this is gonna be used to attach everything, because right now it's just all kind of loose and it can pop out. I'm going to the back and I'm pushing my little 26 gauge wire from the back to the front. And I'm pulling it most of the way through, but I'm leaving kind of a nice tail. And then I'm pushing it back, but on the other side of this coil. Let me see if I can manage to do that. Actually, it's gonna have to be on the other side of the other coil because I can't, it's not squeezing through for me. So, do you see that right there? Before I tighten it, you can kind of see it. There it is. Now, when I tighten it, it becomes harder to see. So I'm grabbing the tail end that I started with, and I'm just pushing it through from the back to the front. It honestly doesn't matter 100% if you do this exactly like me. I think it's going to be actually pretty difficult to do this identical as I'm doing it. I think your best bet is just to kind of play it by ear. So here it is. I managed to push it through right there where the stone is. And then here it is in the back. It just kind of went this way. So now I'm going to put it in a similar manner, trying to wiggle it in there, see if I can find a little gap. There we go. So the first thin coil and then the thick coil, past those two. See that? And then tighten that up. See what that's looking like here on the back. Now I'm going to try and just go a little higher. See if I can get that. Okay, so now when I pull it through, it came out right here. Just gonna push it to the other side. See if I can wiggle it in there. Alright, so see how everything's just getting nicely attached and now it's not sticking up. So you want to just continue doing this. I don't want to be boring and repetitive here, but you just want to keep going with this, and then if you run out of wire, you can just go ahead and secure the little end. So I have kind of a long end here, so I'm going to go ahead and, I don't know, attach something to somewhere before I secure that off. Let's see if I'm going to work this through here. There it is. It's right where I wanted it to go. Pushing it through. And there we go. Whenever you're ready to be done with one of your little 26 gauge wires, you just kind of take it on the back here, find a little spot to just wrap it, like I'm going to wrap it around, if I can get to it here. Actually, I'm going to have to do it right here because I can't get it through that little frame. Just wrap it around a bunch of times. Because this is a thinner wire, it's a 26 gauge wire, I would recommend wrapping it, you know, not just like twice, but maybe like 3 or 4 times at least to just really secure it. And then you're just going to cut it, you know, and tuck it in. And so you just want to look at your piece. Your piece may not be identical to mine at this point, but just want to look at it and make any attachments that you see necessary with the 26 gauge wire. So I made a bunch here. I might just, you know, go real quickly and just make just a couple more, maybe like over here and over here. We'll see if this little end will work out for that, and then I'll be right back and I'll show you what I'm going to do about adding little beads. So I made a couple attachments, one right here and on the bottom, and then later on I'm going to attach this up here when I add some beads there. But first I'm just going to fill in this hole. See this little gap right there? And you can leave it if it doesn't bother you, but I'm just going to take a little 2mm bead, and depends, you know, if your hole is bigger or smaller, you might want to upgrade and get like a 3mm bead if your hole is a little larger, and this 2mm bead just pops right through it. So I'm putting it on to 26 gauge wire, and I'm sticking both ends. So I kind of folded my wire in half with the bead here in the middle, and I'm pulling the little ends through, and it looks like that. Now I'm just going to wrap this wire around right here a few times and then trim it off, so I'm securing it. So I have some beads here. I have 2mm beads, 2 of them, then a 3mm bead, then a 3.75, then another just regular 3, and then 4 of the 2. And this is just something that I did because I just kind of wanted it to fill up this space up here where the loops are. And this I think looks nice, but it's up to you. You can use different sizes, different amounts. So I'm just gonna attach that here, and using just some 26 gauge wire, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap these wire ends kind of around this base. And then this little end wire from it, after I have attached the beads, I'm gonna go ahead and just make a little loop and attach this as well to the frame, and then I'll be done. All right, so now I'm finished. Again, the beads are just completely optional, but if you want to add them, you know, for a little bit of decoration or to fill in some gaps. So I just attached that 26 gauge wire, wrapped it right here. You can see the little wrap, wrapped it on the back. Here's my back. And here it is from the front again. And that is it. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.